Good evening and welcome, everyone. We are honored to have Professor David Martin. Dear David, I would like to begin by expressing my gratitude for your open heart and your willingness to contribute to the anthroposophical community in Israel, alongside your many significant activities worldwide. The topic you will address in this meeting serves as a foundation for our shared commitment to personal growth and development, especially in these challenging times. Thank you in advance. With your permission, I will switch to Hebrew and to introduce you.
Thank you.
Okay. פרופסור מרטין נולד בשנת 1973 בארצות הברית, גדל בארצות הברית, בצרפת ובאנגליה, הוא רופא ילדים, אנדוקרינולוג ילדים, אונקולוג, דיאבטולוג והמטולוג. הוא זכה במספר פרסים עבור מחקריו בתחום הגדילה, התפתחות השלד ואנדוקרינולוגיה. הוא מרצה ויועץ בתחומי התמחותו בכל 5 היבשות. לאחר שהיה פרופסור לרפואת ילדים באוניברסיטת טובינגן, הוא כעת פרופסור ובעל הקתדרה על שם גרהרד-קינלה-צ'ייר לתיאוריה רפואית, רפואה אינטגרטיבית ואנתרופוסופית, ומנהל המכון לרפואה אינטגרטיבית באוניברסיטת ויטן הרדקה בגרמניה. פרופסור מרטין טוען שכולנו בילינו שנים רבות בבית הספר בלימודי נושאים רבים, אך לא הכשירו אותנו לעבודה על רגשות, על מצבי רוח, על מחשבות ואידיאלים, ועל הקשר שלהם לכוחות החיים והבריאות הגופנית והנפשית שלנו. ועל כל אלה הוא ידבר איתנו הערב. אז בואו נצא לדרך. Professor Martin, the stage is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Nurit. It's a great honor for me to be able to speak to you in this way. I have never been to your country. I would love to do this someday. And I am deeply moved by what is happening in your region to so many people, and hope that in some way, through my thoughts, I can contribute to your country and the whole region reaching peace again. And I think many people all around the world are thinking of you with these wishes. And with this, I begin my lecture. And I would like to start just by saying a little bit about where I am working right now. So I lead the Institute of Integrative Medicine, and I'm chair of Medical Theory, Integrative and Anthroposophic Medicine. And here's our university, and it was founded by Gerhard-Kienle in 1982, and anthroposophic doctors who wanted a university that was free enough to really think what needed and do what needed to be done. He experienced in the Second World War how the universities in Germany followed what was happening at the time too uncritically, and sometimes very actively. And his dream was to have a private university in Germany, and this was the first non-state university in Germany that was free from influence by the state. And of course, usually the influence by the state is a good one, because luckily in many places we have good states, but we cannot at all times be sure that it is the case. And that's why I think it is very important to have independent institutions. And the university has developed from being in someone's living room to now having over 3,000 students. And every Thursday, we spend the whole Thursday on personal development. So not on studying what medicine or politics or dentistry or whatever the students have come for, but for all-round development of personality and knowledge. And what we also try to convey is how to turn mainstream and alternative movements into complementary movements, and that in turn into integrative movements, where we pay attention to the symptoms but also to the resources. And in my lecture today, I want to share with you some ways of looking at resources. And for those of you who don't know what anthroposophic medicine is, it is based in mainstream medicine, but tries to extend it by taking the levels of life, the levels of psychology, the levels of individuality and biography, and everything that nature can contribute, and the further development of nature through technology, through pharmacology, into account in a very interdisciplinary matter. And I've been very privileged to work in several anthroposophic hospitals and have thoroughly enjoyed it, and I still do so in 2 hospitals in Germany. I will be taking over 24 hours tomorrow because a colleague has become ill. And we're also working in nationwide projects. We have 82 research projects at our chair, and one, for example, helps parents understand that fever is a resource and how to understand and deal with fever in a way that the immune system profits from the fever, and that we do with our fever app and other projects. And another one is how to use the resource of technology, of digitalization, of screens in a way that helps children develop and does not cause them harm. And so we are actually in charge of both the national guidelines for fever and the national guidelines for prevention of dysregulated use of screens in children. And we have actually the largest randomized controlled trials in the world running in Germany on these themes, and have just received more funding from the government for both of these themes, and also for a third theme for training, integral training for children with type 1 diabetes, to continue this research. One of my favorite books is The Philosophy of Freedom, or in English also called The Philosophy of Spiritual Activity. And one of the projects I'm involved with is an annual training of the Philosophy of Freedom, where people are invited to spend 7 months studying the Philosophy of Freedom every day for a quarter of an hour. And I've been doing this for 5 years now, and I can tell you, the more I do it, the more I find that so many sentences of this book are a meditation. And here I share one sentence with you. Each of us is called to the free spirit, just as every rose is called to become a rose bush. And the question is, can the undertitle of this is Observations of the Soul based on Natural Scientific Method. Can you come to this conclusion through observation of the soul? And this is what I would like to share a little bit with you, and I would like to engage into the 8th chapter of the Philosophy of Freedom, where Rudolf Steiner describes how amongst all the experiences we have, and I will take the slide away to share this with you, amongst all the experiences we have, something appears within us that is able to connect all the experiences we have with each other and more make sense of them. And this something is our thinking, the most mysterious and amazing quality of the human being. And then he describes, yes, but we are not only beings that cognize and make connections from one to the other, we're also beings that have a holistic impression of what the world does to us or with us. And that is our capacity for feeling. And we also have the ability to do something in the world, to the world, with the world. And that is our capacity for willing. And feeling and thinking may appear more lively, more vibrant, more concrete, more real than thinking. thinking may appear in comparison very abstract and dry. And Rudolf Steiner has some very interesting things to say about that. And I would like to share these quotes directly with you. So if we look, before we go to Rudolf Steiner, if we look at the whole spectrum of all the feelings we can have, from the basic feelings of sad, angry, scared, joyful, feeling powerful, feeling peaceful, you can also make your own wheel of feeling. So many ways we have to feel how the world impresses on us. And this wheel, the first person who made this feeling wheel was Gloria Wilcox in 1982, and she actually left spaces so that you can fill out your own feelings. And I think it's quite an interesting exercise to try to use this wheel and to see how is my subject being affected by the world, which also includes my organism right now. How do I feel? So this is an invitation to you, and it can be quite a resource to use this feeling wheel with patients, with friends, in situations where you have the feeling there is something going on there, and it would be actually good to try to put a name to it, and to then try to explore ways of moving oneself within this wheel. And of course, one can also do a wheel of the will, of the activities. And here's one idea. If you have children who are bored and don't know what to do, you can make a wheel. There's even one on the internet, but of course it's nice if you make your own, where you can even add and subtract various activities and then spin the wheel and find an activity and then do that. And in times of crisis, it's sometimes very, very helpful just to go into doing and to go into the deed. But behind all of this is, of course, thinking, because you cannot grasp what you're doing, you cannot grasp what you're feeling without thinking. And so, as we are adults, I'm going to address this thinking, whereas if we were children, I would address you through the will, through the feeling, and I would try to combine the will and the feeling through rhythmical exercises, through songs, through games, and all kinds of things. And this is what Freunde der Erziehungskunst with their Notfallpädagogik, with their emergency pedagogy, are doing beautiful work all over the world, and I'm sure many of you know them, and know what it's like when a team comes in and starts doing rhythmical exercises, musical exercises, games, etc., with traumatized children, and how quickly they can de-traumatize and come into a more healthy and healing space. Now, we as adults can go right to the center of the human activity and start from there, and that is thinking. And Rudolf Steiner says the difficulty of grasping thinking in its essence through observation lies in the fact that this essence has all too easily slips away when it wants to, or when we want to bring it into the direction of our attention. And then I'm left only with the dead, abstract corpse of living thought. So let's just start with a very dead, abstract corpse of a living thought. I would like to invite you to take a very, very abstract thought, like the thought of a straight line. I mean, is there anything more abstract than that? The thought of a straight line. So just please think a straight line. And while you are thinking of straight line, I will talk you through to some of the experiences that people make while doing this. So, for example, a person may imagine a straight line going from slightly the back to the right, forward to the left, a little bit upwards. And you can also imagine this line with me. And you can imagine stretching that line, stretching it further. And while you're stretching it, observe what's happening to you, observe what you are doing. Just stretch this line and keep on stretching it in your mind. And keep on extending it further and further, and observe what sensations you have, observe what happens within you. Keep on stretching, keep on extending that line further and further and further and further and even further. And some people will feel it is wobbling. Some people will feel they have to unravel something. Some people will feel, well, they're extending it. It starts to get difficult. It goes beyond their zone of comfort, and then they're still extending, and it's as if their whole being was being slightly extended, and they're extending further. And the line starts to lose whatever color it may have had or whatever thickness it may have had. And now keep on stretching it. And now stretch the line backwards, the other part of the line. Stretch it. Stretch the other end of the line. Extend the other end of the line. Further and further and further and further. And observe observe everything you can observe. Keep on stretching it. I observe right now how something is getting more quiet within me, more infinite. I keep on stretching. And I have even difficulty speaking because I'm so much into the experience of this line extending in both directions so far. And suddenly this abstract idea of a line is actually it's doing something with me. I'm doing something to it. My thinking is extending a mental picture beyond anything I can picture into something I still know. And that's the thought of a line that is beyond any mental picture. And then I can realize, oh, this line, this thought of a line, that is one particular line. What would happen if I release that line from its particular place, because that's just a particularity that it's right there? What happens if I allow that line to be in all directions at the same time, everywhere at the same time? Because the thought of a line does not have any place or time. And that's where I realize I am at the threshold between a mental picture and an idea. And the idea is beyond space, is beyond time. It's a knowing beyond anything I can actually picture. It's beyond words because I can use different names for this line. Try to be in that knowing of what a line is. And as soon as a mental picture of any line comes, you free it from that restraint. And then you may start to realize, wow, just the simple idea of a straight line is beyond time and space. It is more durable than anything I can perceive with my senses. It is more real in a way than anything that exists around me, because everything that I can see around me will be gone one day. But the idea of a line is like this eternal truth beyond time and space, and I have access to that. How interesting. And from that, I invite you to come back from all possible lines to the one line you have pictured, which was extending from one infinity to the other. And now letting this line, maybe as if you were, as if it was a spaghetti, and you take two fingers and you start to roll this line up and bring it in from eternity, rolling it in a spiral as if you were rolling it into a galaxy. And just imagine in your mind's eye, you're rolling this line up from infinity, you're pulling it back from infinity. Watch your feelings. Watch exactly what's happening while you're doing that. You are doing something with your thinking to your insight, to your mental picturing. Roll it in, spiral it in. What's happening to infinity? Is infinity coming near you together with the line? Even though it's still infinite, do you feel infinity is closer to you? And now you can roll up this line in, like on a fork, on a spaghetti, and in your mind's eye, put it in your mouth when you have just had a taste of infinity. Let's go back to Steiner after having made this experience. Whoever brings him or herself to truly have life in thinking will come to the realization that the weaving of mere feelings or will cannot even be compared to the inner richness and the experience with this life that is at rest in itself. The idea of the line is at rest in itself, and at the same time moving within itself, and it moves other things. I can move things inwardly with the idea of the line. As a matter of fact, most of the things that we look around in our rooms have been created with the idea of a straight line. It is precisely from this richness, from this inner fullness of experience, that its counter-image in the ordinary attitude of the soul looks dead and abstract. We think that the idea of a line is dead and abstract because somewhere, intuitively, we know how lively it could be, and how free, and how beyond time and space and alive. No other human activity of the soul can be so easily misjudged as thinking. Yes, we think that thinking is abstract, but this is only the strongly assertive shadow of thinking's light-permeated reality, warmly immersed in world phenomena. Everything I immerse myself in with consciousness, I do with thinking. In this beautiful candle, on this special day in your culture of 9 candles or of 8 candles, everything, even the finest loving experience, I bring to my consciousness through thinking. Thinking is finer than the finest we can experience, or at least as fine as that. This immersion of thinking into the world takes place with a force flowing in the activity of thinking itself, which is the force of love in a spiritual way. Whoever turns to essential thinking, to pure thinking, finds in it both feeling and will. We have just experienced that. It took will to do what we did with the line, and our feeling became more subtle and followed it. pure thinking includes thinking and willing. Whoever turns to essential thinking finds in it both feeling and will, the latter also in the depths of their reality. Whoever turns away from thinking and turns only to mere feeling and willing loses true reality. Whoever wants to experience intuitively in thinking will also do justice to the emotional and volitional experience. And then turning to the 9th chapter, just to bring Steiner to Steiner's philosophy of freedom to its highest conclusion and near to where the anthropology of thinking becomes a spiritual experience, becomes anthroposophy. Whoever observes thinking lives directly in a spiritual, self-sustaining weaving of being within it during the observation. And I hope you had an inkling of what that meant with just such a simple thought as the thought of a line, how you were weaving within it and how you were getting nearer to the essence of what this thought is. And this activity is highly alive, and you become alive. And you may even feel fresher from having done this. I hear often this experience from doing these exercises in groups. This feeling refreshed by having touched pure thinking just for a few seconds. Indeed, one can say that anyone who wants to grasp the essence of the spiritual in the form in which it initially presents itself can do so in thinking based on itself. So this points towards a spirituality that is clear, that starts at a very pure place of clear thinking. And this, I think, can be a starting point for our times. Because when we develop the affinity, when we develop a friendship with this thinking, we can take anything we choose towards this sphere. And that takes us beyond differences. Just as we can all agree eventually on what a straight line is, by its own very purity, we bring our own selves near to what a straight line is. We adapt our brain, our organism, our feeling, our willing to what a straight line is. So also can we bring ourselves nearer to other truths. To the truth, for example, of what a human being is, beyond anything that separates us from each other. And therefore, I think modern spirituality can begin in thinking because thinking is already a more or less conscious spiritual experience that can be brought to consciousness. I am standing right now, thanks to my thinking, on 32 joints. Try to just balance two things on each other, and you know what it means to balance one thing upon each other. And right now, I am standing, you are sitting or standing on several joints, one above each other. And we can only do that because we are in two worlds at the same time. We are in the world of the senses, and within the world of the senses, we are in the world of thinking that permeates everything we experience and enables us to gain freedom, perspective, individual activity, because we are not just in it, we are actively in it. And this is a space from which we can start to find the forces that rejuvenate us, the forces that free us, the forces that heal us in their very source, the forces that can heal our feelings, the forces that can bring light into our will. And one of the forces that I find most healing for feelings is the force of wonder. And going on a journey towards discovering thinking can lead to a growing sense of wonder about everything. And that can become so strong, so large, that you start to feel that this feeling of wonder is shining on everything else like the sun is shining on everything. It starts to warm it. It starts to enlighten it. A feeling of wonder and awe. And this is a feeling that makes all other feelings lighter, broader, more spacious. And as a matter of fact, science even has discovered this lately. And I bring you back to some scientific findings. So of all the feelings here, I was actually quite amazed to realize the sense of wonder, the sense of awe, was not in Gloria Wilcox's original table. Why? Was it because she too was so wondering at all these feelings that the feeling of wonder was above it and she did not even realize that she had not included it? And there are newer wheels of feeling that do actually include wonder quite here, awe, distance on the side. Whereas I feel this feeling of wonder and awe actually deserves being brought above all other feelings. And this is actually what Rudolf Steiner does in one of his other books called Knowledge of the Higher World and Its Attainments, which starts from the feeling side and starts from this feeling of wonder. And science actually has started to study the feeling of awe. It involves perceptual vastness, which is the sense that one has encountered something immense in size, number, scope, complexity, ability, or social bearing. It stimulates a need for accommodation. That is, I alter my understanding of the world. And it gives you a sense of timelessness. We have that when we see or are part ourselves of optimal athletic performance, peak experiences, spiritual or mystical events, or the feeling of flow, where 6 centimili defined as a time when my ability, the best of my ability, is in coherence, corresponds to the highest challenge that my best ability can meet in the way that they actually can be met, can be solved. So when I learned snowboarding a few years ago, for example, I had this feeling of flow because I was keeping myself to the best of my ability and at the threshold of what was possible for me to do. And on the other hand, feeling time pressure hinders the tendency to help someone in distress, is a common barrier to volunteering and engaging in community service, a common barrier to behaviors linked to greater well-being. And awe releases us from this feeling of time pressure that is so prevalent in our times today. And you can release yourself. Maybe tomorrow morning you take 5 minutes to think a straight line and experience with it and see what happens to your feeling of time pressure. The feeling that one lacks time is associated with markers of unhealthy diets, eating fewer family meals, consuming fast food, not engaging in leisure experiences. Whereas elongated time perception leads to choose experiences versus material goods. A decision pattern that is associated with enhanced well-being. Our well-being, having a certain financial security, helps your well-being to a certain extent, but then it doesn't really anymore. What then helps your well-being is actually enabling, choosing experience, inner rich experience versus material goods. choosing to spend time with a straight line. Experiential products, by their nature, require time to be savored, choosing time to spend with a rose or with one piece of apple. Feeling time is constricted leads to high blood pressure, headaches, stomach pain, poor sleep quality, lower satisfaction, depression. What an amazing thing time is. And what is the relationship between thinking is time? We have just experienced how we actually come beyond time with our thinking. And that can lead to awe, and awe brings people into the present moment. Being in the present moment underlies awe's capacity to adjust time, perception, influence decisions, and make life feel more satisfying. Feel you have time. Feel how impatience goes away. Feel how you are more willing to help others. You are more willing to act out of your heart and have a great life satisfaction. And we have done quite a few research also on our chair on these topics. And we see that this is a study enrolling 461 patients with multiple sclerosis, or 46% had multiple sclerosis, 22 had depression, and 32 psychiatric diseases. And they were invited to experience the beauty of life. And their experience of the beauty of life was significantly lower in persons with depressive disorders. Lower gratitude and lower awe were significantly related to depression. And a lot of our experience now on awe, on thankfulness, on gratitude show direct correlations with health, and enabling people to experience more awe and gratitude help them improve their health. And here, just also for you to have something to read with child visitors or grandchildren or children, or if you are a child listening, or if you have a child's heart like I do, you may enjoy the book or the film The Little Lord Fauntleroy, who had a very mean, very rich grandfather, but and who invited him to come back from the States to become his heir. And his mother did not like this grandfather at all, but talked only positively to the little Lord about his grandfather. And so the little Lord interpreted everything the grandfather did positively, even though everyone else in their right mind would interpret it as being mean to others. But through his constant positive interpretation of what the grandfather was doing, eventually the grandfather started doing the good, and his heart opened. And here, many of you know the beautiful movie Life is Beautiful, where one of the greatest Italian actors plays the role of the father going through the most impossible situations in the Second World War as a Jewish father, and how he acts in such a way that the child feels that each step is something positive, and that enables the child to go through these terrible experiences with such resilience that this film is, one could say, a lesson in how to enable oneself and others resilience. And we exercise that in medicine, in psychotherapy for our patients. And I try to exercise that with anyone, to meet situations and to meet people with an expectation, an active expectation of positivity, an active expectation of good. The most frequent question I ask myself is, what will this experience be good for? And this brings us back to activity, to will. And Ludwig van Beethoven had such a power of will that he just continued to compose even though he became deaf. Going from thinking into willing and becoming active in the face of challenge. Or Marie Curie, a researcher at a time where hardly any researcher was female, facing sexism, losing a husband who just walked out of the laboratory and fell under a horse carriage. She basically invented the field of radioactivity, discovered new elements, polonium, radium, won the first woman to win a Nobel Prize, and then to do it again. This being active, but sometimes some of us will be in situations where we feel, where we can't even find the beginning of activity, where we feel empty, where we feel no feelings even. We may have had an overload, we may have had a trauma, more than our emotional body can cope with. How to get out of this again? How to help each other out of such situations? And perhaps you would like to take the time afterwards or tomorrow to share with someone. How can we develop tools for situations like this if one of us comes into a situation where we feel empty, where we feel unable for positivity, unable to contribute to a situation in any positive way, unable to feel anything? Low emotional capacity. Emotions overflow and you struggle to control them, but all goes in vain. Unable to understand others' emotions and fail to empathize with them. Become frustrated or angry about small mistakes or setbacks, even when they are not in your control. Unable to bounce back from negative experience or stressful and challenging situations. Unable to effectively communicate your emotions or hesitate to express them to others. You try to avoid situations or conversations which involve emotions because you feel uncomfortable, you feel unable. You can engage in negative self-talk. You are always criticizing yourself. You have difficulty experiencing positive emotions like joy, love, gratitude. You often feel disconnected or isolated or try to isolate yourselves from others. You feel unable to build positive relationships. You find yourself constantly struggling with self-regulation, trying to manage emotions in stressful and challenging situations, or even trying to avoid impulsive behavior. What you do when you're in such a situation, what you do when you realize someone that is near you is in a situation like this. One thing that can help is to come together for a set time, a clear time frame, half an hour, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, with these clear roles, clear time frame, confidentiality to the point that the person who is doing this with you will not even talk about this experience to you afterwards unless you invite them to. Total confidentiality. What happens in this space remains in this space. And one person takes the supportive role and the other one takes the protected role. And the supportive role is there with their whole heart, seeing the other person in their best, warmest light, giving them space. This is, by the way, Rudolf Steiner's definition of friendship. Friendship is the ability to continually see the other person in their best light, at their best selves, in the face of situations where they are not their best selves. They are not in their best light. And the person who is in the protected role is invited to feel whatever is there. And they don't have to feel anything. There is no intervention. They are just given space. And they can use words, but maybe they do not want to use words. They can use movements. Maybe they do not want to use movements or gestures. They are given space just to feel for a while what is there or what is not there. Everything is allowed to be. And you do that for a set time. And I would like to remind you of what we did with regard to the exercise of thinking. You, the supportive person, are in the realm of open thinking, the light and the warmth of the most open, warm thinking possible. And this makes a difference to the person. And then you change roles, even though, so after the set time, you change roles. And even if the person in the other role feels they can't do it, invite them to do it anyway. And give you the same space and the same time. And the other person may realize that they also gain something from doing that they feel empowered, that their self-confidence increases, that they are giving you something, but by this fact, they are also giving themselves something. So this is something you can do, that lay people can do in any situation for a shorter or a larger period of time. Something very similar to that is the Zwiegespräch that has helped many marriages, where one partner speaks for 10 minutes about whatever they want, and the other partner gives them this space and just listens. And then you swap for 10 minutes. And then you may do another session of 10 minutes and 10 minutes. And you may do that for 40 minutes. Each time, each person has 2 or 3, maybe 60-minute sessions of 10 minutes where they just speak freely. And the other person does not interrupt with any emotions, with any breathing, is just open and there. And if you do that once a week, you will discover how your relationship deepens. And you come from things that may appear superficial at the beginning to deeper and deeper qualities within the very simple things of life. And Vivian Dittmar has made a nice video on this, what I've just told you, this mutual help, which you can find on YouTube. And this paying attention to the little things in life is something that Thich Nhat Hanh was very, very able to cultivate in his long years of life until he died a couple of years ago. And his 10 rules for life was find your Buddha mind, have compassion, stop seeking others' approval, quite difficult, be open to the mysteries of life, there is the awe again. Transform your suffering. Use suffering, see suffering as compost for tomorrow. Sometimes I say, the shit of yesterday is the compost for tomorrow. Excuse my English. Be aware of your body. Keep to your principles and convictions. Believe in peace. Thich Nhat Hanh, as a young man, was in a war zone in Vietnam. And the village where he had cultivated peace and upbringing was destroyed by bombing. And they had to figure out, are they going to build it up again or not? And they decided to build it up, to keep the hope up, even though this village was quite close to the frontier, to the fighting zone. And it was bombed again. And for the second time, they had to decide, are they going to build this village up, knowing that it could be bombed a third time? Would that not be terrible and demoralizing? And they decided to build it up again. And it was bombed a third time. And everyone came together. And they had to decide again. And Thich Nhat Hanh had little hope. But in himself he knew, I have to give this young people hope. And if we don't build up this village for a fourth time, We are giving in. If we don't build up this village for the fourth time, we are not believing in the possibility that it will not be bombed and the possibility that peace one day will come. And they built it up for the fourth time. And peace came. And the village is still there today. Keep to your convictions. If you are convinced that peace is the long-term goal, keep to it. Cultivate stability. Get rid of anger. Forgive. Practice meditation. Thich Nhat Hanh said the essence of our practice can be described as transforming suffering into happiness. And I was quite impressed to find out that Frank Martin was asked to during Second World War to compose a song, to compose a large piece of music, in fact, called In Terra Pax, in Earth of Freedom, of Peace, a song for peace. It was composed during the war in 1944, and it was supposed to be played as soon as peace would come out, as soon as peace would be there. And indeed, less than a year later, a day before peace was even made, and that was on the 7th of May, and in a way, peace was only officially declared in September, but already on the 7th of May, before the very last bombing, this orchestra played In Terra Pax. And this is the kind of belief in peace we need. And I would like to bring this sharing with you to a close, coming back to this feeling of awe. Because I feel that this feeling of awe, this feeling of reverence, this feeling of awe for ideals, the feeling of awe and reverence for what the human being is able to do, the feeling of awe and reverence for everything that surrounds us in this beautiful, amazing world, that this feeling of awe can rise into our sky and can enlighten and warm every other movement and feeling and thought and entity within our soul, and therefore within the whole world. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to sharing with you. Many thanks.
Wow, David. I think we need a few minutes just to take it inside ourselves. I never tasted the infinity as a spaghetti, but it was delicious. So
Yes.
now, yeah.
Since I showed you a film with Roberto Benigni, I had to eat spaghetti with you.
Yes. Now we can open the microphone now. If you have a question or a comment, please do it. Maybe I will ask a question.
I can see a comment in the chat, so.
Yeah.
Thank you for your beautiful comment.
Yeah. You were talking about thinking and sense perception. And I can't avoid thinking what happened to me after the beginning of the war in Israel, 7th of October, when I felt that the sense perception attacking me, and I'm losing the ability to think. Maybe you can say something about it a little bit more.
Would you like to describe us this experience a little bit more? Would that be possible for us to share that with you?
All over there was the fear and anxiety and stress and the news in the television, in the media, a lot of information. While I was losing the basic ground to stand on it, to try to think clearly what's happening. Of course, and I felt this is my inner battle.
Yeah.
Find a place in myself where I can start to think about the reality in a clear way, not losing my most inner belief about human being, humanity.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, some of you may know this feeling that suddenly as if the floor drops away from under your feet in a particular situation, as if literally, maybe through some news or through something that touched your own life, literally the floor feels like it's falling away from under your feet. Or as if you have no more space, nothing more within which you can retreat and feel comfort in. Your mind is racing and you cannot come to quiet, you cannot come to peace, you cannot come to relaxation. And something the Dalai Lama said was very helpful for me, and that he says, the first 20 minutes are often beyond your control. And there's not much we can do there. Except one question that really, really helps me is, what is this going to be good for? Yes, but there's even, that's something I can hang on to, but there's not anything much else I can do. But maybe you can't even hang on to that. Maybe you don't even have the presence of mind for that. But after 20 minutes, there starts to be the possibility of re-owning the situation. And different people will have very, very different techniques for doing this because we are very different. And so that's why mind-body medicine courses, like the ones developed by Jon Kabat-Zinn, for example, and I've also done a training in that, they offer many different kinds of possibilities. So in each of the session, we offer the students writing, sitting down and writing, journaling, or getting up and dancing, or going out into nature, or quiet meditation, or walking meditation, or doing something handiwork, doing some handiwork, etc., etc. Eating a raisin in taking 10 minutes to do it. And what Thich Nhat Hanh did, and he describes this, is for him it was coming back to breathing, just breathing, and saying, I can be aware that I am breathing, and that this is continuing, and that with my breathing, I also find the beginning of inwardness, which I almost am losing in this situation where the world of the senses is so attacking me so strong. And just to have this little bit of feeling of inwardness, And another thing that helps me is to practice meditating on wisdom. So not thinking about wisdom, it's good to think about wisdom, but then eventually stopping thinking about wisdom and actually meditating wisdom, being wisdom, finding oneself into wisdom like we did just the beginning of finding ourselves into the idea of a straight line. And Rudolf Steiner gives the meditation, wisdom lives in light. Somewhere else he says, just try to develop, in the Bologna lecture he gave, his only lecture he gave to a scientific community in 1911 in Bologna, Philosophical Congress. He says, taking something like transforming the idea of wisdom into an image of light, that is the kind of meditation that can take us further into developing the organs we need to have a stronger soul to be able to deal with and be capable of experiences of soul beyond our normal experiences. And the experiences you were talking about, Eyal, is an experience of soul beyond our normal experience. The question is, can we bring ourselves to develop our soul? Or will life develop our soul? And both can lead to soul development. Some initiates are initiates because they have gone through such a tough life. And the question is, can we develop our soul in such a way that we will be able to meet the next challenge with more ability? The next challenge that challenges everything we have been able to deal with up to now. And so that would be my sharing with you on this, knowing that many people who are listening could share many, many more things, and that you, Eyal, as well, could contribute many solutions to what you were asking.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I was thinking about the awe and reverence you brought, and I thought I felt that it generates hope to the future stream of time, as Steiner spoke about it in the psychosophy lecture in 1910. I think in the war, something with the future was blocked, when we were in the present and in the past with our pain. And do you think it's really connecting with the hope?
Thank you very much for asking this. And I would like to take this opportunity you are giving me to do one thing with you which we did not do in the lecture. And that is taking the word awe, taking reverence, observe yourself. What does it do to me if I allow myself, if I give myself time to experience reverence? Just take a minute if you wish and just experience reverence. Try to observe what happens within me. What happens to what I can observe within myself when I feel reverence, to my uprightness, to my feeling of space, to my organs, to my breathing, to my sense of who I am. And what happens if you try to bring that experience of reverence into a gesture, or if you try to take your hands and your arms and in a way do something that even intensifies the feeling of reverence, because it goes into resonance with it. What happens if you bring your body even more in resonance with a feeling of reverence, with a feeling of awe? And you may experience something expanding, something moving upward, something opening to something higher and being at awe of it and open, and at the same time, ooh. And now you can go over to the feeling of hope. What does the feeling of hope do to you, do with you? What happens within you? If you tune into the feeling of hope, what happens to your physiology? What happens to your constitution? What happens to your stance? What happens to your posture? Hope. Where does your feeling of hope have its center? What kind of movement does it have? How broad is it? How far does it stretch? How strong is it? And what does that do to you? If you give yourself time to experience this incredible force, it is a force. I call it a force because it does something. We have forces within us. And one of these forces is the force of hope. And it literally changes us, and through that it changes the world. And you can feel the affinity, the correspondence between awe and hope. And that would be my experiential answer, or my attempt at an experiential answer to your question.
Thank you. Is there any question or comment or? You are so quiet this evening. Yeah, there is a comment on the chat.
Said listening to your voice and the sounds you brought was healing and warm. Thank you.
Thank you. I can only speak this way because I'm speaking to a very special audience, even though we are online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
While you were speaking about the mutual help exercise between two people, I was thinking about what they did in South Africa, the reconciliation meeting. And it gave me some hope that someday we will have it here in Israel.
Yes.
With the Palestinian.
Yes.
Not only in a very small scale, which we already have, but in a larger scale.
Yes. If any of you have ever been to Rwanda in the middle of Africa, that is a country, a small country where they had one of the worst and most terrible genocides only 36 years ago. And I had the images of this genocides in my mind still when I heard I was being invited by the health minister of Rwanda to come there to give a contribution in the Congress on African Health and Economics Transformation Initiative. And I arrived to this beautiful, peaceful, totally clean country where everyone is dealing with each other in such a gentle way. Our taxi driver had lost both his parents and 3 of his siblings to the terrible massacre. And he was driving people from the Hutsi, he was Tutsi, who had been of the caste that had killed his family. But they had decided they will now make peace. They had seen the atrocities that their thinking had caused. And that gives me until today huge hope for all the places in the world that are not as at peace with each other. Because I think few things as terrible as that have happened to any country as what happened to Rwanda.
That is the philosophy of freedom.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you so much, David. It was wonderful and inspiring. And really, thank you for what you have brought for us. You know, it's not only the content, it's the whole inspiring of yourself. And you're great and open heart. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nuti. Thank you, Eyal. Thank you all.
A good opportunity to announce that on the April 4th, David will be a guest in our annual conference, medical conference in Israel, a conference which is going to be for the first time for educators and therapists. So April 4th, you can sign the date. Save the date.
The date, yeah. Save the date.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you. I very much look forward to that. Thank you.